back at it again with the boys. Today we're losing one guy. Kevin is sick this week, but we're bringing back another sick guy in Austin. Austin was sick last week, and it was only the couple of us, but he has returned. Surprisingly, he's returned after the ACC beat the hell out of the EIWA last week. And I'm sure Robbie can't wait to get into that one, and we're probably going to start there. But gentlemen, good to have you back on. Can't wait to dig into it. And like I said, let's start with that ACC versus EIWA battle. I honestly thought that it was going to be closer than what it was. Obviously, Robbie being a homer, he's probably surprised that Cornell scored any points. But I'm gonna give Robbie the floor to start out. What did you take from the duel? I will say that in kind of the 11th hour, after we got some inside information in the chat, I messaged Earl and I was like, hey, change my pick to NC State. So if you look at it, it did move from Cornell to NC State late, but it did happen. So I did get that in. But Robbie, I'll let you kind of have at it and talk about the cross matchup between the two conferences.
So I think the biggest takeaway I had was how much more prepared and on point NC State was for this duel compared to the Oklahoma State duel. The Oklahoma State duel, they really kind of came out flat. They got knocked on their heels right away and were never able to dig out. And this one was just the opposite. As soon as that first whistle blew, it was go time, and they really put on a show. Great performances all around. I mean, clearly, I was a little upset by a couple of the backups that we saw. Whether or not there's waterfowl involved in that, I guess we can discuss. But overall, I mean, they looked great. Ryan Jack was able to come back and get a win, and Orini looked really pretty upset that he didn't get to wrestle Vito and really put it on Ethan Karishi. So it's across the board, they just looked fantastic. It was the NC State team that we know that we can see, with the exception of Ed Scott, which wasn't his best performance. But turns out that Meyer Shapiro is pretty good at this wrestling thing. So can only take so much away from that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is disappointing to not get the matchups that you want. We did get the Shapiro versus Scott match, which we figured was going to be a good one. Meyer definitely put it on Ed Scott. Ed Scott has had kind of a roller coaster of a year as it is anyway. So it could have really went either way. But yeah, I mean, I guess when you take out some of the big home run hitters that Cornell has, you kind of expect a lopsided sort of a result. Austin, to you, what'd you take from it?
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Robbie said. It looked like NC State was kind of ready to go. Cornell was a little bit flat. We all kind of knew Cornella at 41 was hurt. To not see Vito in the lineup was a little shocking to me, because I think he's been resting the past few weekends. So, again, I don't want to say it was a duck. I'm sure he's a little bit banged up. I think he's battling something. And, we kind of talked in the past, Cornell's a very March-focused team. They're going to worry about EIWAs, NCAAs, and Vito has Olympic trials a few weeks after that too. So nothing there. But we did talk offline. It was good to see Josh Saunders at 141.
He looked good too.
He looked really good. Yeah, he was beating Jack for a while. Kind of not fell apart, but lost it late. I'll say. Just didn't really have success at 49. Now he's down at 41. He looked great. He picked up a win on Sunday against App State as well. So it was good to see Saunders in the lineup and, kind of contributing to that Cornell lineup. I'm super impressed with Trent Hidley, man. He is really, really good. Cardenas has 4 losses this year. 2 of them were to Hidley. Beginning of the year, he lost 10-2. This time he lost 8-2. So Hidley really has his number and just seems to be a full tier ahead of Cardenas, who was 8th at NCAAs last year, and he won a U23 title this summer. So Hidley's kind of, for lack of a better word, beating the crap out of someone like that. I think him and Brooks are going to be in the finals, and I think it's going to be a close match there if we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Saunders, he had that lead early. I think it was experience that beat him, honestly. Yes. Ryan Jack's very good. He has been under the brightest lights. We've seen him compete very well. this season as well as in the past. So, when you're a guy like Josh Saunders who, doesn't have that kind of experience, you're not in the lineup, you're kind of in and out. You're up at 41, you're down, or you're up at 49, you're down at 41. Like you're kind of all over the place, and in spite of all those things was leading a top 5 guy, late in the batch. So, definitely hats off to him. It's good to see him kind of get in there, especially after he was a kid in high school that you really thought was going to come in and make a really big impact. Hopefully he can do that. Hopefully he can get on the mat with some more consistency. I know in the past he's had some consistency being in the lineup, but hopefully he can kind of impress upon that, and we can see him kind of get rolling. And Austin, to your credit, you did say that Cornell is a team that really does focus on March probably more than anything. We've seen it. It's been pretty apparent from them all season long, right? Like we have seen their hammers, mismatches, upset fans, but it's like, listen, we have a job to do, and that job to do is winning in March and making sure that we're on the podium that we care about, not so much winning dual meets here during the season. So it's been a handful of times that we have seen them be at full strength. You don't see Cornell at full strength very much. And also, like you said, Vito does have world team trials or Olympic trials that he's going to have to worry about as well. His body's going to have to start shrinking, whether or not they're doing the same thing that, we know Dayton Fix is kind of doing, where he's kind of testing those waters of, shrinking your body and getting ready. Yet to be determined, but both of those guys are going to be at 57. It's going to be very interesting in that weight class in and of itself, because that's probably one of the most competitive weight classes that we have. So, maybe he is kind of resting. Maybe he is, shrinking his body, getting prepared for that Olympic run that he's going to have to put in, like last year, where he came off of that title and the NCAA level and right into a world title. So who's to say? But it was a good duel. It was competitive. It's not like the score, I don't think, really reflects how things truly went, right? Like it wasn't like everybody was just tech fall. But that Trent Hidley match, man, you were looking forward to it. You knew that it was going to be a match that you kind of had a star next to, and Trent has just continued to dominate match in and match out, right? He even was at the Farrell during the year and looked impressive there. So on all levels, he's looking really, really good in and out of folk style, freestyle, and he's been a true leader. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing both him and Brooks meet at 197. Obviously they've met in the past, going back to high school in Fargo, in the Fargo finals, NCAA finals. I don't see that, anyone really gets in the way of them at 197 pounds this year. So, I think that will probably happen. But let's kind of stick in the ACC. Robbie, take us through some of the other things that went down. I know we had, Pitt, Virginia Tech, UNC, UVA. What are some of the takeaways from the week?
Well, let's hit one more thing from the NC State Cornell duel with Fishback taking out Foca. Mm-hmm. He's been, a big prospect. He trained with Trent all last year in his redshirt year, and he's really put together a solid year, and that was a really, really good win for him, especially coming into what's going to be a really big match for him this week with TJ Stewart, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Foca is a guy, I think I said it once before, where he still had kind of the opening to drop back down to 74 if he wanted to, instead of staying at 84. But man, hats off to Fishback. He's had a pretty solid year and has, shown some consistency in the lineup. So, it's an upset, but with the way that you've seen both these guys compete this year, you're kind of not surprised that Fishback is, one of those guys where he is ascending in the rankings and just kind of climbing levels. But yeah, take us into the rest of the ACC. What did you see during the week to kind of recap before we, move on to EIWA?
Well, I was in Charlottesville. UVA had North Carolina. Both teams a little banged up, so we had a few starters out. It was actually a really competitive duel. We kind of figured going in that it was going to be pretty close. It was a 5-5 split. UNC did a much better job with bonus points. Seemed to be kind of the aggressors all night, which is not super common for them. I guess this year especially, they haven't been as aggressive, I don't think. But they looked fantastic. I mean, even their backup, Sabino Portello, did a fantastic job at 84, filling in for Gavin Kane. They won some close matches. Ishins and McCoy was a great match. It ended up coming down to early takedowns for McCoy to win. But bonus points were the separators there. So I mean, it was a great duel. I was excited about that one. It was good to see both of those teams who are kind of developing right now and pretty young, to see where both of them are at.
Yeah, I mean, you see UNC kind of under the new regime with Rob Cole and how things are kind of rolling there. I love how, we talked about this before too, is, Rob Cole talking some trash, getting people involved in that NC State versus UNC rivalry. Hopefully it does become a rivalry, but both teams with UNC and UVA, they are in kind of a rebuild, right? Like it is, young guys in the lineup, new face in UNC. UVA has a lot of young guys. UVA had kind of a weird year where they had, a lot of their duels be kind of taken away at the beginning. So, not as much experience for the guys that you would really want to get that early season experience too. So yeah, definitely a good duel. Gotta love the across the board competition in the ACC. And speaking of competition, you also had Pitt and Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech has obviously a big one this week, but what did you see from them that you feel like they may have maybe closed the gap on NC State as they prepare for them, as they took on Pitt last week?
So I think part of it was that they were really, really fired up about this duel. Last year, Pitt came in and really smacked them around at home. So they wanted to go up to Pitt and send a message, and they did. The team score was not the greatest indicator because a lot of the matches were super close. Cooper Flynn barely escaped with the last second takedown to beat Camacho. So that was, a wake-up call. He's number 3 in the country right now, and he snuck out a 3-2 win. But Camacho also pinned him in 26 seconds last year. So I guess that's an improvement there. Biggest takeaway was TJ Stewart, who's, was a huge recruit. Kind of was a tweener coming in between 97 and 84. He's finally decided to, really buy in and make that cut, and he's had some success this year so far at 84. He knocked off Reese Hiller, who was number 9 at the time. It was a really tight match, no scoring. Both of those guys are pretty stout defensive wrestlers, and went into sudden victory, and Stewart was in on a shot. Heller draped his legs over, and at one point had a head scissor. His legs crossed enough to make an illegal hold, and that was the call. Roby was all over it. He threw the brick before the call was made. So they saw it on their side. I don't know if that was just the right angle for them, but the refs were on it. They called it, and that was how that one ended up. So, I mean, it's a great confidence builder for TJ, and it's going to be one that Reese is going to be able to look at and take some good things away because he's going to know what he needs to do, come 2 weeks from now.
Yeah. Yeah. ACC, we said before we jumped on, can't believe we're like a week away from conferences. We have a couple more duels in, all of our conferences that we cover, but it's just like flown by. And, maybe it was just me. I don't know, but it just seemed like we're here already, right? It's already time to, hit the conference mats and get to NCAAs. So pretty crazy, but let's head to EIWA. I know we kind of talked Cornell a little bit, but there were plenty more that happened in the week in EIWA. So Austin, what do you got?
Yeah, big matchup EIWA last weekend was Army and Navy, the Star Series match. Really good match. I don't know if you guys watched it. If you didn't, I recommend going back. Army won 18-17. Kyman Smith at 149 for Navy had the Army guy on his back, which would have won in the match. Navy fans in the stands really wanted the pin. Looked like he was flat for a little bit. Not going to get into that there, but it was a really close match. Cool way to end it, and Army won that one. Like I said, now they're number 25 in the InterMat rankings. well deserved. They've been wrestling really well lately. Love what Coach Ward's doing up there. Talked to him for my EIWA article this week, and he said something funny I liked. He said he loves the Army-Navy match. It's the best example of military appreciation night. You just don't have to wear camo to prove it, So, did service academies. I thought that was really funny, and just really, really cool match overall. Would love to get myself there next year and see what it's all about. Just rivalry and atmosphere looked really intense. Friday night as well, Drexel's Matt Azevedo had his 100th career win as a Drexel head coach. Started there in 2011 when I was there, so good to see him get that. Following night, F&M beat Drexel at Drexel, which was, a good win for F&M. Big, a small program, Division III school for people that don't know, and they have 0 scholarships. So it's cool to see a small school like that with a chip on their shoulder every year kind of come in and beat a bigger school in Drexel. And finally, I have Binghamton beat Northwestern. Again, smaller school in Binghamton, beat a Big Ten school in Northwestern. This was their first win over a Big Ten school since 2017. And I might be a little biased here, but I think Army and Binghamton are 2 of the more underrated dual meet teams in the country. Binghamton beat Navy earlier in the year. Like I said, they just beat Northwestern, so they're a good squad. I think they have 4, maybe 5 guys in the rankings now, individual rankings. So, Coach Borshoff doing a heck of a job up there at Binghamton, and I like what direction where this conference is heading. Even with the Ivies leaving, you got schools like Army, Navy, Binghamton stepping up. Drexel a little bit of a down year, but like I said, mentioned F&M. They got 4 guys in the rankings, which is pretty unbelievable for a small school like that. That's 2,000 students max. So cool to see F&M and that school doing big things.
Yeah, it's always cool when you have a team like F&M or a team like Binghamton that is kind of an underappreciated sort of a team, right? Like you said, F&M D3 school, and they're coming in and they're wrestling big bad D1 teams. And they are D1 obviously in wrestling, which is why stuff like that happens. But 0 scholarships. It's just like Army Navy. I think, who was it? Scott Green or maybe it was maybe it was Coach Ward. One of the coaches tweeted something about how, there's no NIL, there's there's
no
it's
transfers,
just
no 6th, 7th-year seniors. Yeah,
exactly.
It's all development.
You're in, and it's basically old school wrestling, right? So it's just it's really cool to see those. Army wrestled very well in spite of the controversy, right? Was it a pin? Was it not a pin? I think every year we definitely have some controversial calls. Every week we have controversial calls, especially this year with just about all the craziness we've seen with takedowns. And was it a pin? Was it not? But yeah, Navy came into the year too, wrestling really well. So to see Army kind of make that ascension and end up outlasting them, beating them 18-17, really, really cool to see. And, like I said, Binghamton beating Northwestern, first Big Ten win since 2017. That's pretty dope. Just like UVA and UNC, who are in kind of those rebuilding times, I feel like Princeton is in kind of the same boat. Dubuque taking over this year, losing an assistant coach in Sean Gray. He heads out to Stanford mid-year. Reese Humphrey now in, I think this was a week ago or 2 weeks ago, Reese Humphrey, goes from club coach to assistant coach. So there's just been a lot of change for Princeton, and it's kind of taking a toll on that room. I really think that once Dubuque can, and it's not like he came in without knowing those guys or knowing anything, right? But I think once he can truly establish the guys that he's recruiting, the guys of the mentality that he wants, even though he was heavy in the recruiting when Ayers was the head coach, I think it's still, it's now his program. So it's something that he's kind of going to need to implement. But they had a tough week last week, a really tough one, 2 big losses. So have you talked to Dubuque at all? Has he said anything about the development of the team now that he's the head coach?
I haven't talked to him in a little bit, to be honest, but, it is important to note that they do have at least 3 of their best guys, gray shirting this year, not in school. Between McGowan at 125, Mulhauser at 74, and Ty Whalen, who won Midlands at, I think, he won 49. He beat Kyle Parko. So once you get guys like that next year, they have a bunch of youth there too. So I don't want to say it's a punt year for them, but I think it's more of a rebuilding year, like you said. And next year they're going to get some studs back, and a lot of those young guys will be another year older. So same with Drexel too. I'm an alum, so I can make excuses for them. But a lot of their good guys are kind of in redshirt right now, so next year is going to be a better year for them once the youth that they have in there now, get some more experience under their belt. And I think next year, again, a lot of these schools would be, better off.
And we talked about how Binghamton got their first Big Ten win since 2017. The Big Ten has been pretty crazy this year. There's a lot of parity in the Big Ten. I mean, you have Iowa beating Nebraska, Nebraska beating Michigan, Michigan beating Iowa, right? Like, it's just like absolutely insane this entire year. And then you had Nebraska going to Penn State and having a lead 7 matches in. It wasn't until Carter Sirachi's win at 174 that Penn State was in the lead. And then you if you really look at it, and obviously, horseshoes and hand grenades, right, when it comes to those almost and could have happened. But like, Brock Hardy was right there. It was a controversial call. From what I'm hearing, Bo said ouch or yelled out that he was in pain or something of the sort. Obviously I'm not there, so I have no idea. And the angle that you see on TV, you can't see his face. Is there pressure in that position? Certainly. Is there enough pressure for them to stop it and call potentially dangerous? I don't really think so.
Not at the Division I level.
No, not there, right? Yeah. So I think, and Brock Hardy even put it out there, right? Like, he's making no excuses, so I'm not making any excuses either. There's still a lot of time on the clock. Bo is number one for a reason. He is completely battle tested, and certainly anything could have happened in those last couple of seconds. But that changes the match, right? That is a huge momentum shifter. He goes into a break and, comes out and he can't even get that close to a leg again. And we know Bo. Bo is great defensively. We've seen it all year. We talk about it all the time. He really plays it close to the vest when it comes to, basically wrestling anybody at this point. We've seen him wrestle guys that aren't ranked, guys that are ranked, and it's kind of the same result. So, good match between those guys. Hardy ended up when he beat him last year at Big Tens, I believe. So we'll probably see that match again. But I mean, hats off to Nebraska. They have wrestled well this entire year. They're one of 3 6-2 teams in the Big Ten right now. The other one is Minnesota, who's also 6-2. They started the year 0-2. 0-2 in dual meets. Right. I believe they lost to Iowa and maybe Nebraska, and then won 6 straight. And it's been an impressive 6 straight for them. But last week, they faced off with Wisconsin, and I wrote about it earlier in the year about how this was going to be a very good duel. It ended up being a really good duel, but like, the piece of the puzzle that everyone needs to go watch is the match between Pat McKee and Eric Barnett. That match is always insane. I wrote it in this week's recap, so people will be able to read that. But they've wrestled 10 times now. McKee is up 6-4 in that entire series. He's pinned him 4 times. 5 of the 6 wins for him have come with bonus. There's a major in there, and there's only 1 decision. All of his losses, I think there's 1 bonus point win. I think Barnett beat him like 17-6 or something like that. So I think there's maybe like a major in there, but all the rest are all decisions. But McKee has pinned him now 4 times, and it's like a rivalry that people like you don't even realize is a rivalry because it's not like it's a Penn State Iowa type of rivalry. It's Minnesota, Wisconsin. So I wanted to see that match be last, honestly. Like, I really did, but because I knew that it was going to be absolute fire. Like, you just every single time, like, it's either a ton of points or there's a pin or just something crazy and wild happens, and something crazy and wild happened again, Pat McKee ends up coming out on top of a scramble and throws a leg half over and ends up scooping the head and pinning him, right? So, like, it's always something crazy. Those guys go at it every single year. I'm pretty sure we'll probably see it again at Big Tens. I think they wrestled twice at Big Tens last year. McKee pinned Barnett first and then ended up losing to him 8-2 on the backside. So, like, it's incredible. It's a great matchup. It's an awesome series. I love it. But yeah, I mean, that match, it was great. And like I said, I wanted it to be last, but unfortunately we don't build cards very much in wrestling. It doesn't really happen. Outside of Doc B, shout out to the Terrapellis who truly put a card together for the Doc B finals, where it's a staggered final of guys just like in there from best to, from least to worst. Right. So I would love to see more of that. That's kind of my soapbox thing there. But besides that, in the Big Ten, we got another Gabe Arnold sighting again at 84. I think he certainly does make the lineup better when he's in at 84. He still has one more date left, and we'll get to it. Iowa wrestles Oklahoma State this weekend. So, we could see him against Dustin Plott, but he certainly does make the Iowa lineup stronger when he's in at 84. And I'm sure he doesn't really have any trouble making that weight. He's probably a natural 84 as it is. But I mean, we didn't get the matchup we wanted, obviously. We wanted to see him against Penn State. We get him, a week or two later against Shane Legal. He ends up winning that. Wasn't the easiest match for him. I think they could certainly put him in at 84 now, maybe redshirt him next year, because he does make the lineup stronger, right? If they're going to try and, make some waves at NCAAs or at Big Tens, your best bet would be to have Gabe Arnold in your lineup this year at 84 with all the other guys that are missing. Who knows if Brands comes back next year and he's in at 84 or whatever else. But, for the time being, the guys that they have available, Gabe Arnold makes them a tougher team. Like I said, we did see him this week. Iowa's still, tough. They're in that top 5 in the Big Ten. They're one of the other teams that are in that 6-2 kind of record, kind of holding things down. So, yet to be determined whether we see him. He does still, like I said, he does still have one more match where he can kind of get in there and can maintain his red shirt. The deciding factor would ultimately be if he weighs in at Big Tens. That's when that the red shirt is off and he's in the lineup. Because he still would be able to have hit his 5th date, and they can make the decision then, which you kind of feel was at this point was probably the plan, right? Like, let's give them these 5 and we can assess kind of where the team is and what is going on and kind of go from there. But I mean, man, I would have loved to see him against Penn State and not against Wisconsin. But I would definitely love to see him this weekend. So kind of going right into, what I would love to see and what's coming up this weekend. Iowa wrestling Oklahoma State in Oklahoma State. It'll be in Stillwater. It's always a crazy crowd. I was sitting front row center, and it actually happened right in front of me when Pitch pinned Spencer. Locked up that cradle. I was sitting at the head table. And the funny thing is the week before we were watching, and, I was in the Flow office, we're watching, some matches with Spencer, and somebody had gotten to his leg, and he always goes to, kind of that same defense where he's kind of in a split. And I'm like, man, somebody's going to end up cradling him. He gets, the head gets a little bit close, ends up getting cradled up against Nikki Pitch, right? So it was just like, I was like, man, did I kind of jinx it or did I call it? I don't even know. But like, we had talked about his defense.
Coach Holmes over there.
Man, it's been a while since I've been in the corner. The last time I was in a corner, it was 2010, and I was in South Carolina. No talk about South Carolina wrestling ever. So, but yeah, it's been a while. But I think this match with Oklahoma State and Iowa is going to be great. I I can't wait to see it. I was trying to get an interview with Dayton Fix this week. We're going to get it next week. So I'm going to check in with him next week after, the regular season is over. We'll talk Big 12s. We'll talk his career. We'll talk about some of these big milestone matches and going into Olympic trials as well. But that's what I'm looking forward to. It's kind of the biggest match in the Big Ten that I can't wait to see. And then, shout out, I already talked about it, but shout out to Minnesota starting the year off 0-2 and then finishing 6-2 in the conference. That's a really tough run to do. We all know about what kind of grind it is in the Big Ten. So, hats off to Eggum and the rest of the squad for having a really strong finish. Robbie, over to you. What are you looking forward to this week, and any shout outs from last week?
I mean, nothing big this weekend. It's a pretty boring weekend for the ACC. So, oh wait, no, the championship rivalry duel. That's the one. So yeah, Friday night in Raleigh, gonna be a huge one. NC State and Virginia Tech going to determine the ACC dual championship as it has for the last 14 years, I think. I think that's what it was. 14 years. One of those two teams has won the dual title. They're both shaping up to be, really good. NC State's ranked top 5. Virginia Tech's just outside the top 10. Some solid matches up and down the lineup. I've playing around with it all day. I was in a meeting today at work and was bored out of my mind, so I was doing this instead. I was playing with potential matchups and what it's going to look like. And, there's so much parity in this duel. There's really only 2 matches where I don't see a potential upset being reasonable. I don't think Mackay is getting beat by Faison, and I don't think Trent's going to get beat by TJ or by Andy Smith. But other than that, the other 8 matches, honestly, could be a coin flip. And with as tight as this duel always is, there tends to be something wild in it every year. So I don't know. We'll see what it's going to be. Big matches to watch. I think Camacho Flynn is going to be a great match. Flynn's number 3 in the country right now, but Camacho's just coming back. Already has a win over Ramos, the number 1 in the country, so clearly he can beat anybody. 33 is going to be a good match. Arini and Latona, they split last year, I think. But Arini's clearly been had a better year this year. They're 3-1, 2-1 so far. Latona's 2 wins, 2-1 for Arini. Latona beat him at NCAA's in the placement round last year. Crook Jack will be a great match. That one's for placement for the 2 seed for the ACC tournament. Then you got number 2 and number 3 in the country at 49 with Henson and Arrington. Henson's got 2 wins over him. They're both true sophomores. Henson beat him 6-1 in the duel last year and 4-2 at the ACCs last year. And then 57, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get Andonian back just yet, though he is healthy. So he's an option this week, but I don't see it happening. I don't think they're going to throw him back out there against Ed. So we'll probably have Ulri. Chance we'll see Hippolito. That would be really fun if we do. I'd love to see Ed try to throw a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion. I think either of them could be throwing each other out of the gym. That would be really, really fun to watch. So if we make that happen, that'd be cool. And then, I don't know. There's just so many compelling matches that are so close. Everybody in the series, if they have matches against each other, almost all of them are split or very close to it. It's gonna be a tight one. If we see NC State come out like they did against Cornell, I think they have a slight edge. If we see Virginia Tech wrestle like they did against Pitt, they could definitely pull the upset over the higher ranked team. So it's going to be a battle. I wish I could be down there. Unfortunately, my son has to get his tonsils out tomorrow. So as I was making my schedule this year, I had all my dates written down, and I was getting the okay from the wife, and she saw that date, and she said, nope, you don't get to go to Raleigh. That's a no-go that day. So unfortunately, I'll be watching that one from home, but it's going to be a big one. So I'm really excited about it. Like I said, I don't know. It's
to
me,
it?
it's a coin flip.
9 of 10 bouts, potentially.
To me, it's a coin flip. Ranked. It could really could go either way, and momentum's going to play a huge part. Very likely will come down to bonus points.
Interesting.
So we'll see who's ready to roll. Yeah, it would be 10 of 10 if Bryce was in. So I have the probables from both teams. There's a lot of oars in both lineups. So I think both of them are trying to kind of be sneaky about this and play some head games. But the reality is there's also a lot of implications for ACC seeding that go in with some of these matches, because a lot of these guys are 3 or 4-0, facing another guy who's 3 or 4-0, and this match will determine the 1 seed. So there's a lot more on the line than just the dual title. It's going to play a big
just
role
like in the Big Ten,
the ACC seeding, and
there's some conference versus
ultimately
conference.
NCAA qualifications.
So what's to come this week?
Especially a weight like 41 with everybody being so
finish
good.
Off the dual meet season.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, not a ton of high-end matches in conference. The one that I'm looking forward to is actually out of conference, Lehigh and Arizona State. Lehigh's going to travel to Arizona State. Just knowing Arizona State's history, just this year, I don't think we'll see a full lineup from them. Colt Schultz was just competing in Mexico.
He's not there.
Japan qualifiers, I think. So I doubt we'll see them. Arizona State wrestles Nebraska the very next day as well. So they have a tough schedule this weekend. I was really looking forward to the first 2 weight classes, 25 Stanich and Richie Figs. I just don't see Stanich making that trip. I think they're going to save him for EIWAs, and Figs has kind of been in and out of the lineup as well. 33 was my personal favorite matchup. I made a tweet about it. Clevo and Crookham. They have 6 PIAA appearances between them. They have 6 state titles. I think they have 9, maybe 8 or 9 total high school losses. Wrestling in District 11, wrestling with some of the toughest national tournaments. So 2 complete legends from District 11 going at it. Potentially, I don't know if we're going to see Crookham. He might be competing at this Franklin and Marshall Scramble. I'm still getting word on that. That's kind of the match I was looking forward to, but I don't expect full lineups from both teams just because it's late in the season. Guys are a little dinged up, and it's a far travel from Bethlehem to Tempe. So it would be nice change of weather, but and I want to give one quick shout out to LIU. Sharks this year are 8-8 on the season. They just beat Sacred Heart 41-3.
To be fair, though, I'd like to go from Bethlehem to Tempe
this year,
this time of year.
I like what LIU's doing there.
Nice little break up there.
Really coming along as a new team in the EIWA. They joined, I think, in 2018, 2019, and they're finding themselves in that middle tier already, which is really impressive. And my second shout out goes to Lehigh. They started the year 0-3, much like Minnesota, and then now they're 7-3. They rattled all 7 straight wins, including one over Cornell. They kind of figured it out second half of the year. And again, they're going to Arizona State. We'll see what happens there. I might have jinxed them, but really coming along strong here at the second half.
Yeah, it's tough to do that, and I mean they did it basically all in conference too, and beating a rival like Cornell, a team that is always right there. That's always a big deal. Obviously, the biggest thing is the EIWA trophy, and I don't mean just because of winning it. I mean it's a enormous trophy. That thing is ridiculously big. So we'll see who comes out on top there. For the first time, we will probably see lineups at full strength. For the first time in a long time, I guess I should say. But it looks like we've got a really good way to finish out the season. Oklahoma State versus Iowa, Virginia Tech, NC State, Lehigh, Arizona State. It's going to be a fun weekend. I think I can't remember where all of them are at, but there'll be some viewing pleasure for each one of them. I'm sure. I think, what is it? NC State, Virginia Tech is probably on ACC Network. I couldn't imagine it really being anywhere else unless it's on ESPN proper. Yeah. So hopefully, hopefully we get another really good one. I'm sure that we will. We will there. I think the Pac-12 network, since it is at ASU, has the Lehigh ASU match. And then I
read
think
it was on replay on Sunday. I don't even think they're having it live.
Rocket Shaw will be down there.
I'm not sure. I was looking at ASU's schedule, and on their schedule they have like a little that little TV icon on there. So I don't know if it is live or not, but it is like part of that line on their schedule. So we'll see. And I think it is. It is. ACC has. I mean, they have duels every week. I mean, they're doing what we want when it comes to covering wrestling.
I mean, for everybody who
hopefully more of
bitches
that
about
starts to
the
come.
ACC network,
But yeah, I think
be
Big
grateful for
12
what we have,
might
because the Pac-12 network
IIWA
is a nightmare
and,
to try to navigate.
in Oklahoma State, since it is in Stillwater. I'm not too sure about that one. I was originally supposed to go. It's a 7-hour drive from here to Stillwater, and I was going to go, but that's kind of out of the question now. It's a long way to kind of travel. If it was a little bit closer, I probably would end up making the trip. Plus a couple other things came up for the weekend, but yeah, so much snow. I mean, it's really tough. I don't really want to, put the windows up to drive in this 80-degree Austin, Texas weather. But no, I think, we'll have some really good wrestling this entire weekend to finish things out. And then we'll be back next week
All that
to
snow blocking your way.
recap some of these big things. And then maybe we'll do a separate one and talk conference championships. Because those are literally next week. Cannot believe that next week we are already, getting to conference championships. So yeah, gentlemen, as always fun talking about some wrestling and giving some takes and giving some updates that we know. And we'll talk again next week.